What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. If you watched my live stream last night, one of the subjects we talked about, and one that I really want to focus on because we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, or at least delving into the details, but a new report has come out that while the government is sitting around spending billions of dollars in different weird places while they're shutting down and blocking possible projects for other provinces to open up their economic potential while stating they're going to do things to help us out. The hypocrisy is at its finest. In fact, our government for the last decade, at the very minimum, has behaved as if they can just do whatever they like. And again, they never have to talk about the repercussions of their spending, where the money is coming from. It's always find another way to tax the citizens of Canada to pay for every little virtue signal that they have. I've got a few to talk about in multiple videos coming up, but one of them that we touched on in last night's stream that I think is alarming to say the least revolves around our senior citizens. Now, I have said that I believe very firmly that veterans and our seniors are the two demographics that are the least looked after as it is. When you look at your Canada pension plan and old age security, doesn't really give you a lot. Now, keep in mind, in a household, if you have a combined income, I believe, of over $90,000, suddenly you're not taking as much back. You're not getting as much. You're taxed significantly on your old age security. So you've paid into a system for which you're taxed until, well, you're no longer here. But the government is starting to worry a little bit about how it's going to pay for all of this stuff. After all, they never anticipated people were going to live this long. Their plan was to see you out the door. This article came out. Now, I do want to give a shout out to super lawyer Keith Wilson, who originally posted this story. I know a lot of people have been talking about it, but that's where I heard from it about that. Is it now time to overhaul Canada's old age security? Why some people urge, yes, it is. Now, when I first saw this article title, I thought, hey, yes, it is a time we overhaul things. In fact, I think it's time we stop giving $83,000 a year to illegal migrants who come into the country and put them up in hotels, and we start looking after our seniors who helped build this country. Well, turns out none of that's happening, as it's a bait and switch with the article. Of course, this came from Global News, so is it really any surprise? I'll get into the story and then we'll talk about opinions, but it says ahead of the 2025 federal budget to be released this fall, that's if it even gets released. Keep in mind, Mark Carney has had no budget. He doesn't keep track of any of his spending. He's just throwing money out the window. In fact, yesterday's video, I talked about how Trudeau hasn't left. It was Mark Carney all along. Some are raising a question that could be a third rail in Canadian politics. Is it time to reform the old age security program? It says here, the founder of Generation Squeeze, which is a charitable think and change tank with a mandate to champion generational fairness, is urging federal government to do just that and change up the retirement benefit, and the cost of which is expected to soar over the coming decades. So no need for accountability when it comes to government spending. It's, hey, old age security is going to cost the Canadian government, so we better find ways to nip that in the bud before we stop our ridiculous spending or have any accountability for the ridiculous contracts that we give out. Keep in mind that this is one of the things that's going to plague Mark Carney as he goes back to the House of Commons in the fall. Again, he only worked 17 days after being elected, so I think he's going to face a lot of scrutiny, a lot of problems. We all know Mark Carney can't handle scrutiny very well. So I think his honeymoon phase is over as soon as Pierre and everybody get back into the House of Commons. But this article goes on to say old age security is the single largest growing part of the federal budget, and part of that reflects large subsidies for retirees with combined household incomes of $180,000. So again, over that $90,000 threshold. The $42 billion government deficit in 2025 was projected in the last fall economic statement. It will now be much higher, and it says because of tax cuts and new NATO promises. No, it's much higher because of reckless, unaccountable government spending and waste. But according to Paul Kershaw a professor at the University of British Columbia, it's because of NATO promises and tax cuts. It goes on to say, you could spend our old age security money differently right now and achieve other goals without having to raise taxes. And you could do so, for instance, by asking for more financially secure retirees to take slightly less. So instead of taking from a system that you've contributed to, instead of getting what you're due as a Canadian citizen, you should take less if you're financially able to. You should tighten your belt to make up for the government's stupidity. This is asinine. I can't even believe that this professor, this Paul Kershaw, I'd question if he's willing to take less from his old age security when it comes time for him to do so, because of NATO promises and tax cuts. Why are they so eager? And I know I'm dancing around it, folks, but I'm just trying to cover all the bases here. You could spend our old age security money differently right now. Why do we need to cut it out? Why do we need to spend it differently in different areas? How about we stop spending in those areas and we don't even have to talk about this? This is the problem with government, is it's always, hey, we could spend and spend and spend and spend and spend. We don't have to have any restraint. We just take away from people. Why should we cut back? Generation Squeeze made the case in the group's submission to the budget consultation process. That's where the federal government takes input and recommendations from stakeholders across the country on what should or should not be in the budget. Again, I question if this Generation Squeeze is an NGO funded by the Canadian government for suggesting such a stupid thing. It says, in addition to paying down the deficit, the group adds that the trimming of the amount given out through old age security could be put towards economic supports for many Canadians living in poverty, as the rising cost of living leads to more cases of personal debt, with those most impacted including young Canadians and lower income retirees. Why is that their responsibility to make up those costs? You have to realize that when we talk about the rising costs of living, when we talk about personal debt, when we talk about young Canadians and lower income retirees not being able to afford anything, guess where all of that came from, folks? Inflation. It comes from government representatives who can't negotiate deals with other countries. It comes from unrelentless spending and careless spending and unaccountable spending. It comes from government waste. It comes from multi-million-dollar contracts given out to companies like Dalian, SDDC, the many scandals we've seen throughout our governments. Keep in mind, old age people here are being told they should take less to help these other people that the government has put in this tough situation without any consideration for them, while Justin Trudeau was jet-setting around the world, racking up hundreds of thousands in terms of food bills and booze costs and staying in luxury resorts in Jamaica. Mark Carney has taken already 2 holidays over the summer, not just one. Guess who pays for that, ladies and gentlemen? We pay for his food. We pay for his lodging. We pay for a number of politicians to be looked after simply because they are public servants. So why is it that it's on the shoulders of those who have done their time, helped build up their country, to be told they should tighten their belts so that those others down the ladder should have some form of reprieve? Lastly, if you think any of that money's actually going to go to them for doing so, it's not. The statement above already contradicted that by saying we could spend it in other areas like NATO spending and tax cuts. It said nothing about giving it to those lower down the ladder. It says that this may involve similar payments made to more affluent retirees in order to free up more money for younger and or lower income Canadians to receive more funding and social supports. Now it goes into what is old age security, in case you don't know. And it says, while the Canada Pension Plan is based on contributions made by an individual and their employer while working in Canada, the old age security is funded by all tax revenues and paid out by the government based on how long an individual has lived in Canada after the age of 18. According to the actuarial data from the Office of the Chief Actuary, the costs of the program are set to soar over the next 4 decades as baby boomers age from an estimated $77.8 billion in 2023 to $136 billion in 2035 and $276.5 billion by 2060. One of the biggest things to point out in this video, and part of the reason that they're worried about this creeping up, is this is all falling in line with population control, with telling people don't have kids, bringing in millions of people from other countries because they don't have to give this stuff to them. At least not on the levels that they have to give Canadian-born citizens. They don't want you to reproduce because they don't want this money going to Canadians. They want the money for themselves. Old age security is the largest line item in the federal budget. Fully 1/5 of all federal spending goes to old age security, and this amount is growing faster than most other expenditures put together, Generation Squeeze says on its website. Again, I would compare that to the spending that goes on in our government. What I want to see is just for once, someone to go into the House of Commons and say, we need to pull back. We need to tighten our spending before putting it on the, shoulders of Canadians. I have never once heard the government in the last 10 years say it is our job to scale back in order to set an example to the rest of Canada. Currently, the old age security pays individual retirees aged 65 to 74 up to $727 per month. Wow, that's so much money in today's economy. Provided their annual income in 2024 fell below a threshold of $148,000. $720 a month. Who can live on that? Who can live on $700? Especially if they don't own their property. Rent right now for the average one-bedroom apartment is $3,000 a month. And you're telling me that people getting old age security are supposed to give it up so that those who can't move out of their homes and pay $3,000 a month should potentially get more? Never mind the fact that they said it should go to NATO spending and tax cuts. For those aged 75 and over, the threshold increases to $154,000 a year, and the monthly payments go up to $800 a month. So you get an extra $63 every month. Or sorry, $73. There's bad math for you. You get an extra $73 a month once you're 75. And you can make up to $154,000 in a year. Who's making $154,000 a year at the age of 75? For the average Canadian. It says an individual will receive no old age security payments if their annual income exceeds the threshold amounts listed. Some of those payments may be reduced or clawed back in the form of a recovery tax if annual incomes exceed the $90,000 for an individual in 2024 and about $180,000 for a couple, but are still less than the maximum threshold incomes for each person. So here are the recommended changes. I know this video is dragging on, but I want to make sure, again, all the bases are covered when you understand that all of this cycles back to no accountability with our government. These are the solutions they're proposing and they're giving us because they're oh so generous. Generation Squeeze said in their budget submission that the entire old age security program is long overdue for changes. Canada's old age security program desperately needs an overhaul. It hasn't been updated since its creation in 1952, even though it now accounts for about 1/5 of the federal budget. Auditor General also launched a review in 2024 into programs to assist seniors, including the old age security, which it says cost the federal government over $60 billion in 2020. Keep in mind, the government is also trying to make law for a universal basic income. If old age security is their biggest problem, what do they think universal basic income is going to do? Oh, right. We've talked about this before. They want to give you equity tax on your property. Anybody who owns property, they want to tax your equity to pay for that one. So again, they try to take away from you to pay for their stupidity. The payments and costs for old age security are protected by projected to triple by 2045. This increase was projected not only because of the increasing number of seniors, but also because of inflationary pressures, the Auditor General report said. So inflationary pressures aren't just inflation over time or natural inflation. We're talking about, again, reckless government spending. Generation Squeeze says that by reducing the amount of old age security pays out to retired couples making over $100,000 by approximately 3,200. That could free up $36 billion in savings over 5 years. Again, that $36 billion in savings isn't going to those who are struggling. It's not going to make the lives better of those in a lower income bracket. It's going to NATO spending. It's going to replacing the money that the government reduced income taxes on, essentially saying, hey, don't worry about reducing their income taxes. We're still getting that money. It says here they want to see the federal government use those savings to spend more specifically on low-income seniors, affordable housing, and post-secondary education, and a 50% investment in affordable childcare, as well as paying down the government's debt. You'll never pay down the government's debt. I know we could go on forever with this, but is anybody getting the message right now when they're seeing that this article was put forward by the paid shill prostitutes that have the propaganda arm within the government? That this was a think tank that, again, it doesn't explain if it was done through an NGO. It doesn't explain if this recommendation was done by a nonprofit agency that is funded by the government to tell you what the government should be doing. Our seniors already struggle. I hear from a number of them, not only in my comment section, but during live streams, of people saying, I can't even afford to get a can of beans, let alone turn on my lights. I can't put fuel in my car. I can't travel anywhere. And I've been saving my whole life, but this reckless, ridiculous spending of this government and overinflation and the cost of living, I can't move or do anything with my life. It's only going to get worse for those. And if the government wants to clip any of that, where do you think that's going to put our seniors? Those in British Columbia and Vancouver that have addictions aren't going to be the only ones living in tents if we keep this up. Giving the middle finger to our seniors or to our veterans or anybody else that we should be looking after is not the way this country is supposed to run. Again, this is where I get confused when provinces like Alberta talk about handling its own pension plan that would increase the potential money going out to those who are in need, those who have saved, those who have contributed, and making their lives actually livable. And you have a large number of people saying, we don't want that, we're not interested, hands off our Canada pension plan. Either these people are completely stupid or they've been mind wiped so much to believe that they deserve the punishment that their government gives them. Either way you look at it, this is a ridiculous suggestion. And it's quite appalling. It definitely explains why provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, and others should file to get away from this federal government as soon as possible. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Again, I apologize for the rambling. I just, again, can't understand how this is considered to be acceptable, even to suggest. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure, as you hit that button, you put a thumbs up and a comment down below. YouTube has been censoring comments. They've been kicking them out. The comments and thumbs up help push the video out past YouTube censors. It tells people, hey, this stuff is worth checking out. You need to get this information. So any help you guys can give, if you enjoyed the content, is very, very much appreciated. Join me live here on the channel each Wednesday and Friday night for Friday Night Fringe and Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays, where I'm joined by a plethora of co-hosts as well as the beautiful Mrs. Fringe on Fridays, as we talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to talking with you this week starting at 8 p.m. Pacific, or 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. I apologize, here on the channel each and every Wednesday and Friday. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.